Good day, ladies and gentlemen. So today I'll be teaching you something absolutely new that is going to impact your trading, okay, especially if you're an ICT trader. All right, so let's proceed. This particular topic that I'm going to be teaching you is it has to do with a fair value gap. Okay, now do you know that there's a fair value gap that does not have a gap? And that's the reason why many of you that trade ICT, you overlook trades that you would have taken because part of your confluence is that there should be a fair value gap. Whereas price is going to play out in your favor and you wonder why it played out in your favor, whereas you did not enter the trade, okay? And the reason you did not enter the trade is because you were expecting a fair value gap to be there as part of your criteria. But the thing is, there's a fair value gap that does not have a gap. So for those that are watching for the first time and they are not used to what fair value gaps are, I'll quickly go over what a fair value gap is. Okay, so the conventional fair value gap that everybody knows is a 3-candle sequence. All right, it's a 3-candle sequence. Okay, so you have 3 consecutive candles like this, whereby the wick of the first candle does not intersect, okay, with the wick of the third candle, leaving a gap, around the middle candle. So you can see that the wick of this first candle, this is the first candle, this is second candle, and this third candle. I said it's a 3-candle sequence, right? So the top wick of this first candle, which is the high of this first candle, and the low of the third candle, their wicks, you would notice that they do not touch each other. So you just put an horizontal line on the wicks and you would obviously see the gap in between. So that gap is what we call FVG, okay, which stands for fair value gap. So you can have it in the bullish sense, just like this one I've depicted, or you can have it in the bearish sense, whereby the 3 candles are going to be moving downwards, okay? So the general idea for the fair value gap is we expect price to return into that gap, then we take a buy trade, okay? And if it's a bearish fair value gap, it's the other way around, okay? We expect price to come back into the gap, then we take a sell trade for the bearish fair value gap. Okay. So for this particular special kind of fair value gap that does not have a gap, which many of you overlook, okay, which can even be the turning point to your trading, especially if you're an ICT trader, is called implied FVG. Okay, it's called implied fair value gap. So let me give you an idea of how it looks, then I'll give you an example on the charts also. Okay, I think I have to start again. I don't like the way the drawing is. Let me make the wicks a little bit longer so you get the idea of what I'm trying to teach you. Okay, so this time around you would notice that the wick of the first candle, if you draw an horizontal line on it like this, it's going to intersect with the wick of the third candle, okay? So there is no gap there, all right? In the 3-candle sequence, there is no gap there, so you will just assume that there is no fair value gap here, okay? But that is not true. There is something we call an implied FVG. So how do you get your implied FVG in a setup like this? All you need to do is take 50% of this wick and 50% of this wick. The gap in between them gives you your implied FVG. What that simply means is you don't necessarily need to measure it accurately. You can place an horizontal line at this top of the wick, place another horizontal line at the end of the wick close to the body here. Look for 50% of that and then put an horizontal line around that 50%. I'll give you live examples so you understand better. Okay, sorry. So it's a matter of you taking 50% of the first and the third candles wick. Okay, so you look for 50% of this wick and 50% of this wick. The gap in between them gives you the fair value gap. So let's say 50% of this wick will be somewhere here, right? Like this. Okay, and you can notice it intersects also, or you have something like this. Okay, so 50% of this other wick will be maybe somewhere around here. Okay, so this gap in between now is what we call the implied fair value gap. As simple as that. So let's go to the live examples. I'm not that good at drawings. Okay, so these are the 3 candles I'll be using. This is candle 1, this is candle 2, and this is candle 3. Okay, I already have my IFVG marked out, so I'm going to take the horizontal lines out and show you how to do it from the scratch. Okay, so let me remove this. So now these 3 candles follow each other consecutively, and you would notice that the low of this first candle intersects with the high of the third candle, so it's more or less like there's no fair value gap there, right? Now what you need to do to bring your implied FVG is look for 50% of this wick from this bottom part of the wick to the body. So in order to do that, what I like doing is I'll just place an horizontal line on the low of that particular candle, then I'll place another horizontal line on the body, just to measure the wick. So this is the full wick, right? So I'll just put another horizontal line at the center of it. It doesn't have to be perfect. Okay, so now I have my center of that wick. I can delete the top and the bottom like this. So the middle of the wick is depicted by this horizontal line. Let me copy the line because I'll need it for the second one. So for the second one, this third candle now, its top wick, I'll measure the high of the wick. I'll put an horizontal line on the high and an horizontal line on the body parts just to measure the wick. Then I'll put another one at the center of that space. Okay, because what I really need is the center parts, the 50%. Okay, let me copy. So this one goes to the high of that wick. Then I need the middle, so the middle will be somewhere around here. If you want it to be perfect, you would need to use Fibonacci tool, okay, with 0, 50 and 100. But if you don't have the skill to do that, just measure it randomly like this. You just try to get an idea of where the fair value gap is. Okay, so now that I have the midpoints, I will just delete the top parts and the bottom parts. So this gives me my IFVG. Okay, you can see this space now is my IFVG. So when market gets back here, I'll be looking to take a sell, and you can see what happened with the next candle. Price came back into the IFVG and sold. Okay, you can see the sell. So price still came back, respected it again and sold. All right, so the concept of IFVG is a very good concept. You need to understand it. So if part of your confidence is that you need to see a fair value gap, whenever you see 3 candles and there is no gap, you can still create an IFVG there and you'll be able to take your trade. So there's something else I want to quickly explain. For this IFVG, it's not every 3 candles that you can just cut the 50% wicks and form a fair value, an implied fair value gap, from it. There is a rule you need to watch out for. The first wick, the wick of the first candle rather, and the wick of the third candle should be such that the wick of the first candle does not touch the body of the third candle. If it touches the body of the third candle, it is invalidated. You can't use it. Okay, you won't be able to use it. So that's a rule you need to look out for. You can see that this particular example I gave, this is your first candle. Its wick did not touch the body of the third candle, and the third candle also, its own wick did not touch the body of the first candle. So if you have it like that, you can go ahead and create your implied fair value gap. Okay, so I hope you learned something new today. If you're a new viewer, subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell. I'll see you in the next video. Thanks.